Hello, Creepy Carolina followers. Thanks to one of you for sending in this story. It will be told from your perspective. I hope everyone enjoys. This is all true. I was there. In 1985, I was a senior at UNCW. I had a close friend, Joe, who was highly interested in the supernatural, as was I. One Wednesday night, I was hanging out with Joe and some others, and we had time on our hands. It was a warm night for March, and we decided to drive down to Fort Fisher, North Carolina in search of ghosts, or at least something to do. Another friend, Kevin, joined us, and we drove down. By the time we got there, it was about 11 p.m. There was a bright full moon and just enough breeze to keep the mosquitoes at bay. We parked in the Fort Fisher Museum parking lot and walked along the earthen mounds that were once powder magazines to the back side of the property close to the Cape Fear River. We could see the bright lights of Sunny Point, the ammunitions depot across the river, and the moonlight reflecting off of the river itself. We got comfortable sitting amongst the twisted, gnarly live oak trees that grew along the mounds. We were nearing the end of our days at UNCW, all of us seniors that had been close friends since we were freshmen. I looked at my watch, and it was nearly midnight. I asked Joe how long we should stay. He jokingly said, "You have to wait until midnight. Everyone knows you have to wait until midnight." So a few minutes after midnight, we got up to walk back to my truck a couple of 100 yards away. As we walked along the sandy path that ran across the mounds, a certain small cat ran up to us, and then between us and to the top of the mound behind us. We were in the valley between two mounds, and the young small cat was silhouetted in the full moon. We all remarked that it looked like a Halloween decoration. We continued our walk, and the cat ran out into an open field to our right. For whatever reason, Joe turned and started walking towards the cat. Kevin and I followed and caught up, and we were walking three abreast with the cat about 10 yards ahead of us. It kept its distance and was walking directly away from us and looking back over its shoulder. And then the cat appeared to grow. Before it was the size of a half-grown kitten. Now it appeared to be a large, fully grown cat. We stopped, and it stopped. Joe began to walk towards it, and so did Kevin and I. Over the next few yards, it appeared to grow more, and now for the life of me, it looked like a fox. It had a bushy tail and looked like a fox looking back over its shoulder at us. We all stopped and looked at each other, but no one spoke. Joe started walking again towards the fox, and as we continued, it appeared to continue to grow, and was now a large, bushy, wolverine-looking animal. Again we stopped, and we looked at each other, but no one spoke. I wondered if Joe and Kevin were seeing the same thing I was seeing. I didn't want to say anything. If they weren't, I would sound really crazy. Once again, Joe started walking, and Kevin and I did as well. Still three abreast, and as we covered another few yards, the creature continued to grow and now looked, for the life of me, like a medium-sized shepherd dog. Long pointed nose, shaggy fur. It made no noise, but it would just look over its shoulder at us, alternating left and right as it walked. We stopped again, and Kevin said, "My God, it's still getting bigger." It was actually a feeling of relief that he was seeing the same thing as I was seeing. Joe said, "I know, it's so cool." I thought that that was a fairly odd thing to say, but had to agree. We looked at each other, and it looked at the animal. I looked back to see how far we were from the parking lot, at least 100 yards. The area was well lit from the full moon and the streetlight across that last stretch of Highway 421. There was a monument across the road that had lights. This dog was plain as day 10 yards in front of us, slowly wagging its tail and looking at us over its shoulder. Joe started walking, and for whatever reason, so did Kevin and I. The dog grew and got taller and looked like a full-sized German shepherd. We stopped again. We were approaching a thick maritime forest on the far end of the field. We started walking again, and when the animal reached the far end of the field and entered the shadows of the forest, it stopped and turned around and faced us. It was now a full-grown wolf. No doubt about it, we were staring at a grown wolf or wolf-like dog. It made no noise, but it wagged its tail slowly and stared at us. We stopped, and now we started slowly backing up. Curiosity had now turned to fear, and we did not want to get any closer. Now it was not walking away. We backed up slowly, watching the creature closely. It stepped out of the shadows and walked at the same pace as us. And as we walked across the field, it began its metamorphosis in reverse of before. It got smaller and went through the same stages of changes that it had made before we were once again next to the mounds, and it was a small cat again. We turned towards the road, and it ran and got in front of us. Joe took off running directly at the car, and the cat quickly ran towards Highway 421. There was a small berm with a ditch on the other side, and the cat disappeared out of our sight into the ditch. When we arrived together at the edge, the cat was gone. We looked for a hole or some place it could have gone, but nothing. There were some scraggly azalea bushes planted alongside of the road, but nothing that would hide the cat. There was a street light literally where it had disappeared. We all got into my little Chevy truck and headed back to Kevin and Joe's apartment near campus. When we got there, another friend, Keith, was still up, and we told him about what we saw. As we described it, our stories all matched, and Keith told us we were nuts and high or drunk. We were not. We were all sober as judges. We went back several times between that night and our graduation a few months later. Never again did we see anything. Joe and his brothers rented a camera, but it was 1985 and video cameras were in the beta stage. They never saw anything. It didn't match up with anything that allegedly happens at Fort Fisher. The area is supposed to be haunted by Civil War soldiers killed during the sieges that took the place way back then. Nothing about a metamorphosis of a cat. I told the story to a friend of mine several years later. He was in the process of converting to Catholicism, and at the time, and told his priest, who told him to tell me that I had seen a demon, and we were smart for not continuing to approach it when it turned towards us. I don't know. The closest thing I have ever heard to this, I went on a ghost walk in Charleston, South Carolina many years later, and while on the tour, the guide told us about the Platai, a demon that hangs out in cemeteries. It appears first as a white cat. Ours was various shades of gray. The Platai will approach you, and if you run from it, it becomes progressively larger, becoming a dog and a goat and even a horse that will chase you down and steal your soul. I believe it is a Golo relief. Not sure how you know to tell the tale if your steals your soul. Anyway, to this day, we have had no explanation for the Fort Fisher experience. Joe and I talked about the experience just a few years back. He refers to it as the devil dog from hell at Fort Fisher. I just call it the Fort Fisher Beast. Keith still thinks we are out of our minds. Thanks again to our listeners.